Hello, welcome to this live mixing tutorial. I am going to walk through a full mix of this song, Sinclair by Charlie Boy. And we're going to kind of just record my whole mixing process doing a first pass mix through the song. This is a live recorded track, live in concert, so it will be a little bit simpler in terms of the amount of tracks, and there will be also a lot of bleed between tracks. So we'll talk about how to deal with that kind of situation, how to approach that situation, and then I'll just walk you through as I do everything. So to get started, what I've done is I've imported all the tracks into my session, and then I've nicely organized everything and done some basic edits. So you can see I have all my tracks here on the left color coded based on the instrument. And then I also have some routing set up. So what I like to do is have my master channel at the bottom here. I have a couple of reverbs that I'm going to use as effect sends later. And then I basically have my tracks in musical score order, or whichever order that you prefer. So I have all my drums here in purple. In these here, I have sending to a group of the drum bus. I also even actually have the two snare mics sending to a snare bus, since there is a snare top and bottom. All those are sending to the drum bus. And then here I have pre-set up a drum parallel channel. I really like to use parallel compression and parallel processing on drums. And then both of those are going to send to what I like to call a drum meta bus. So I basically have the drum bus is the overall mix of all the drum mics. Parallel channel is being sent from the drum bus to another track, and then those two channels are both sending to this drum meta bus. So that way I have the meta is the overall volume of all the drums, and then with the drum bus and drum pair I can adjust the balance between the parallel channel and the main channel. Other than that, most of my routing is pretty simple. I have a guitar reverb aux channel that I'll probably use later, and then I have lead vocals and background vocals sending to a overall vocal bus. But that's it for this mix. So pretty much just grouping instruments together, and then also having some auxiliary channels for effects is how I set up my mix session. You can also see in the timeline here, I have a couple of edits, just some basic things like the background vocals. The drummer was singing, so there's a lot of bleed there that I didn't really want. So I cut that out whenever the background vocals are not singing. And then whenever you do edits like this, you just want to make sure that you do a crossfade, one of these, where that way you're avoiding any sort of clicks or pops. And then I also had a little issue I noticed in the recording where there was some extraneous like buzzing radio interference or something in the guitar. So I had to make a little, some volume decrease edits there as well. But other than that, I'm pretty much all set up for my mix. So the first step of what I do, and I guess this would be considered the last step of like the, last step of editing and like pre-processing, making sure my tracks is ready, is I set my levels. So if I go over to my faders here, I'm going to want to set levels so that the initial level of every microphone is approximately hitting negative 18 decibels below full scale. And reason for that is that's kind of the traditional setting of 0 in analog recording. So there's a lot of plugins, especially analog modeling plugins, that are kind of optimized for that level of hitting about 0 analog or negative 18 digital. And then also that kind of ensures that you have enough headroom for your mix, so you're not going to be clipping the master channel and running out of room and having to turn everything down. So what I do for that is I'll just start playing the track here, and then I'm checking all the faders, and then they should hit around where I have 0 set. That's actually negative 20 on my faders, so they can be hitting just a little bit higher than that, especially on the peaks. And then in order to change that, I'm adjusting the clip volume here, so I can change like the overall level on the track before it's even hitting my faders, so that like my initial level is around -18. If you're recording stuff yourself, I like to try to record at that level initially so I don't have to adjust it. But if you're getting tracks from someone else, like go through and set those levels. So I've already done that, adjusted every single level to be approximately -18. And you'll find actually like the mix should already be sounding decently balanced if you do that, because every track is just like the same volume. As we keep mixing, we're going to refine that, but we already kind of have a rough mix. A lot of mixers will do a like a basic mix with just the faders and the pan knobs. In this case, I'm gonna skip that. I'm gonna go right into some like sound sculpting processing of my individual instruments. But as I do that, I'm gonna refine to the basic mix. So, and since we're already pretty close, since the initial levels were calibrated, it should just be a series of like small refinements rather than really having to do a lot of work for a basic mix. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to mute everything except for the first instrument that I'm going to work on, which in this case is going to be drums. And I like to do drums first and then kind of layer in from low to high on my template here. So I'll start with drums, then I'll add bass, then guitar, keys, or whatever, and then vocals last. Reason I like to do that is basically the later you add an instrument into your mix, the more you're going to naturally turn it up to hear it over everything. So I like to do vocals last because that way I can set their levels to be on top of the mix to just get them sitting nicely on top of everything. And then if I need to turn up drums more during the process as they're covered up by other instruments, that's totally fine. I have some room to do that. And I probably will do that throughout the mix. So let's start with drums here. I'm going to just set up a loop in a random part of the song where the drums are playing loudly. And I'm going to start with the overheads because I find that the overheads, usually you want them to be your bulk of your sound. Some genres that may not be necessarily true. You may rely more on the close mics, but I think like the overheads are already going to have a good overall sound, so we can just kind of sculpt that to our liking. So I'll solo both of those, and I'll do some processing. And here, actually, my overheads were both mono, so I'm just going to go ahead and make a stereo track to combine those onto one so I can process them together. I'll color code that. And I can hide these old tracks. And then finally, just make sure my routing is good. All right, so I usually start with EQ on every track. I like to do EQ before compression usually. You can kind of do it either way. It's up to your preference, but I like to mainly use EQ for corrective reasons. And most of my moves are not going to be super huge with like big reductions or big boosts. And basically, I'm just treating that as my overall tone sculpting, like getting the tone where I want it to be. And then the compressor is only going to be compressing the stuff I actually want rather than Sometimes if you go the other way, the compressor can be reacting to like weird stuff that you're going to want to cut out, so it can make stuff a little bit less messy. So here, you can hear there's a ton of bleed in the overhead mics, which is actually okay. We're kind of embrace that for this mix, and we're almost going to use the drum overheads as our room mics. So those are going to be like the overheads are going to be the main part of our sound, and those are going to be pretty loud. I've just increased the high frequencies a little bit to get some more shimmer from the cymbals and some more crack from the snare. And then I have a high pass filter because I don't want too much kick drum in the overheads. I'm going to try to get most of that from the kick drum close mic instead. So I'm cutting it out here. And then I have a little cut in the low mids to kind of take away the mud from a lot of the other instruments in the bleed that we're getting and just have more of a clean sound. So we'll start with that for the overheads, and then I'm gonna go one by one and add the other instruments in of the drum kit. So I'm gonna gradually bring in the kick drum. I'm gonna bring that volume to 0, put in the solo, and then add it in. All right, so what I just did there, I set the basic level of the kick in relationship to the overheads, just getting like as much punch as I wanted. Generally for kick, what I'll do is I will boost the sub frequencies a little bit. So below 80 hertz, I will put a little bit of a boost on the kick. And then for my bass, because the bass can often conflict with the kick, I'm going to focus the bass frequencies a little bit higher. So bass is going to be more hitting 100 hertz and higher. And then kick is going to be covering kind of the low bass to sub frequencies. So each of those instruments will have their own little pocket. I also put a little boost, approximately around 3K um, you're going to want to listen to the particular kick drum and see where you're getting the kind of click and impact noise from the bass drum beater. Um, and boost that. I like to boost that a little bit just for clarity so you can hear the kick, especially on like smaller speakers, like if someone's listening on their phone or whatever. And then I noticed as I was mixing the overheads and the kick, like there's a little bit of boxiness around like 500 hertz. So I cut that on the yellow mid band here. And then there's a little bit like uh, around 100, 150. I also put a little dip because I'm going to put the bass there. So I wanted to take away those like low mid frequencies that are not really contributing to the kick because we're already focusing more on the low end. You also saw me, I was boosting the frequencies of the EQ as I was listening. That's called the boost and sweep technique. You can basically use it to hunt for problem frequencies that you're hearing. Just be careful with that because if you're not experienced with like using the EQ and what different frequency ranges sound like, if you boost and sweep, like everything's just going to sound bad. So it might be more effective to cut and sweep instead, where you have like a very big cut and then you listen to where that cut is cleaning things up the most and then maybe draw it back after. That's an alternative. But I like to use boost and sweep, especially if I'm hunting for like a weird resonance that's happening. So next I'm going to check out the snare mix between top and bottom and then add that in. Oh, and then before I forget, I also put a compressor on the kick. And that's just to even out the volume because these hits weren't 100% consistent and we want like the low end especially of the drum kit to be super consistent. What I did is I have a preset here that I use and I tweak it. And I like to use a high knee for a lot of things. What that means is like the compressor is going to be acting a little bit before the threshold actually hits, and it's kind of a gradual process. So I find if we're trying to even something out, like this track where we're trying to make every hit basically the same volume of the kick drum, having a wide knee is very useful. Relatively low ratio at 3.1. I did increase that a little bit for my preset. And then pretty fast attack at 5.4. I don't like to set the attack on drums to like 0 because you're gonna kind of kill your initial transient. So I like to leave a little bit of space so that the impact still comes through, but still fairly fast. So we're compressing the meat of the signal, and then pretty slow release, but also like the compressor is going to stop compressing between most of the hits. So you can see my gain reduction here, the orange meter. That's going back to 0 between almost all the hits except for when there's like 216 notes together. And that's just going to ensure that my compressor is hitting pretty clean. Doing about 6 dB of gain reduction because we're going to compress this more later, so I don't want to over compress right now. All right, onto the snare. All right, snare sounding pretty good. Um, I like to mix in the snare bottom mic. That one is going to give you a lot more of the top end on the snare, whereas the snare top mic is going to give you more of the lower frequencies, perhaps ironically, because the top mic gives you low frequencies, bottom mic gives you high frequencies. Um, and then, one thing that's super important as well. Usually you're gonna have to reverse the phase on your snare bottom mic. In this case, I already put it through a phase reverse plugin, and froze that processing on my other track, so I don't need to do that. But what you'll want to do is just listen to the phase reversed and the normal, and then see which one has more body to it, and then you can also potentially zoom in to the waveforms and check. A lot of times it may not be perfectly aligned, so it's kind of hard to tell. But if you notice they're completely opposite, then you're probably going to want to phase reverse. Um, Here I cut most of the low end because that's going to be bleed in this case. Put a tiny bump around the fundamental frequency of the snare for a little bit more sustain or a little bit more beef to it. But then these like mid frequencies around 400, I put a little cut just to avoid the snare being like too boomy and too like tommy. And then I have a wide boost at the high frequencies, and that will help you just get more snare response. I find a lot of times, especially for live, even like a lot of times if there's one snare mic and not two, that snare top mic like doesn't really get the snare response necessarily. So you may have to even go a little bit more aggressive with that boost. But now what I'm going to do is I'm going to mix that snare in to the full drum kit. One thing that you might have to watch out for here, the drummer was using a cross stick sound on the rim here. Sometimes you may have to process that differently because it's just such a different sound. In this case, because I have a nice wide boost in the high frequencies, you get your nice click sound that you want. So I don't think I'm going to have to process that separately in this track, but that may be something that you might have to do. I also put a little bit of compression on this snare just to level out these hits, but I'm also going to compress the overall drums more in a sec here on the drum bus. So I don't necessarily need too much. It's going to self-level itself in a bit. So now I have a drum basic mix. No tom mics in this case also. Those are just in the overheads. So sadly, I can't really boost those, but they do come through decently okay. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to set my drum parallel channel. So what I normally do with this, I'm going to set my send to pre-fader, and then I'm going to mute my drum bus, but it should still come through on the parallel channel. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to completely destroy all the dynamics on the drum kit. Basically, I like this one plugin called Devil Lock by Soundtoys. But you can basically use any dirty sounding compressor or possibly like a compressor combined with saturation, which is what this one is. Or sometimes even just saturation, because that's going to naturally compress a little bit. And I'm going to make this sound real nasty, but also like have more clarity of every single instrument is coming through. And then I'm going to just mix this in a tad. So I'm going to dial in the solo sound of this parallel channel. All right, cool. So, as you can hear there, like sometimes the crash cymbals can get kind of nasty in this channel because we're really compressing it, and those are already pretty loud since I'm using the overhead mic pretty heavily. So I do have to be a little bit careful of those. What I did with this little dip is I put the dip on the EQ to decrease the open hi-hat ring, and then also like the super high frequencies of the cymbals without killing the snare. So I put that before the compressor, so the compressor is not going to react too much to those cymbals. I may have to go in and turn my overheads down a little bit as well later. We'll kind of see in the full mix. You can hear also, like, just through those overheads, I'm actually hearing a lot of vocals, basically the whole mix, because of how much bleed there was on stage. We're just going to roll with that for now and kind of see where that goes. I kind of like it because it's already decently balanced and we're getting a lot of everything, which is nice. So we'll see how that fits in with the overall mix. But for now, we're just going to roll with it. So we got our nasty parallel channel. I'm going to put that to 0 now. I'm going to take my send and put that post fader. And now we're just going to be hearing the non-parallel. And I'll just mix a little bit in. Okay, that's pretty much where I want it. You'll hear also, you got to be a little careful doing this because as I'm mixing it in, I'm also making the overall drums louder. And a lot of times that will trick your brain because like louder just sounds better always. So you might want to like go in and try to level match the dry versus the wet. For now, I'm gonna go with this. I'm gonna put maybe a little bit more compression on the drum bus itself, just to get things sitting a little bit more evenly since the parallel channel is like pumping a lot, which is a little bit too much for what I want, I think. So I'll probably just go with stock compressor again here. A lot of times I like to use the stock compressor because it's not going to really put too much overall color to things. It's just going to kind of even things out a bit. Let me try that. All right, that's basically sitting where I'm wanting it. I'm gonna adjust that a little bit more. You saw like those crash cymbals were hidden too hard, so I had to decrease the overheads, but then I kind of had to compensate by increasing the kick and snare close mics a little bit. I think in this case I actually decreased the kick mic a little bit as well because I was hitting the compressor really hard, but I just increased the low frequencies, so it's still hitting like the hitting your chest in the way you want it to, but not like overall being too loud. So now I'm gonna keep going with this, add in bass. So this bass track is really dark. You saw me trying to boost high frequencies to give it a little bit more high end clarity, but there's kind of not that much existing in the original bass. So in any situation like this where you need more clarity, you need more high frequencies, but they don't exist originally, I'm going to add some saturation to solve that. So basically what saturation does is it's going to add high frequencies that are a multiple of your low frequencies, where you have new frequencies added to the track that are basically keyed in harmonically to the low frequencies existing there. So it's going to make your low notes have more clarity without needing to just turn up the low frequencies themselves. So there are a lot of good plugins you could use for that. I like this one, Little Radiator from Soundtoys, is really great. I believe it might be free, or there's frequently they'll give it away for free. So that's one's really good. Other one that is great is also Saturation Knob, which is definitely free. And that one's pretty great too. I'm gonna try Little Radiator first and see if I like what I'm hearing here. Hear how you're hearing a lot of those like nice string noise and like rhythmic muting that the bass is doing, and just adds more clarity when we have a little bit light distortion. Okay, that's a little bit better. On this bass too, I'm not gonna do. I don't think I'm gonna add compression necessarily because looking at if I look at the waves here, it looks like it's already pretty compressed, probably from a pedal or something. So I might just do a little bit of um limiting though, just to make sure that none of these spikes are going to be too spiky. I think I'll actually use my normal compressor here. So what I just did there is I put some sidechain compression between the kick and the bass, and this is a really good way to get some separation between those two instruments, since a lot of times they'll be occupying similar frequency ranges. Basically, I set it just to kind of chop the very first attack of the note whenever the kick hits. So you're missing that, but only in the low frequencies, and only for a really tiny amount of time. So it's basically going to be inaudible that this is happening, but it will add a lot more clarity. All right, bass sounding okay. On to guitar. All right, so now we're kind of running up to a potential problem here where this band is, I believe they're a quartet, but it's basically a power trio situation, right? Where the singer only sings and the guitar only plays guitar. So we basically only have one chordal instrument. So in terms of panning, we need to put our lead vocals down the center. That just makes sense. Bass has to be down the center to handle the low frequencies, along with kick and snare. So basically, like the only thing that's actually stereo right now is our drum overheads, and everything else is mono. I'd like to try to get some stereo stuff going, but there's nothing to balance the guitar on the other side. So what I'm going to try to do here is I'm going to try to put a slap back delay on the guitar on the opposite side. So I'm going to use this track. I have guitar reverb here. I'm going to put that on the other side. And then I'm going to play around with that, see if I can get a good sounding delay, and see if that works. Okay, I don't know if I like that or not, but we're gonna roll with it for now. You notice I put a chorus on the delay, which I think will sound cool for this style of music. Just add some extra interest as well, rather than sounding just like an echo, basically. Um, and then I also have, so the delay channel is going to be a little bit quieter. So I have that 100% right, whereas the main guitar signal is going to be partially to the left. I'm not sure exactly where I want that yet, but we'll see. So we'll roll with that for now, add in vocals, and see where we're doing from there.
There'll be 3 more days till June and November. There'll be 3 more days till June and November. But it's December. It's December again. There'll be 3 more days till June and November. But it's December. It's December again. There'll be 3 more days till June and November. But it's December. It's December again. There'll be 3 more days till June and November. But it's December. It's December again. There'll be 3 more days till June and November. But it's December. It's December again. There'll be 3 more days till June and November. But it's December. It's December again. There'll be 3 more days.
So you saw my EQ here. Usually I will try to take out a little bit of low end on vocals, especially for live. If they're singing into SM58 or something, there's going to be a lot of proximity effect where it's going to boost the low frequencies. So I usually have to cut that a little bit. You're going to want to do that in context too, because if I play the vocal solo,
There'll be 3 more.
it might sound a little bit thin, but then if I put it in context,
There'll be 3 more days till June and November.
it's relatively fine. I boosted a little bit of like the mid frequencies here, and then a lot of times I like to increase the top ends, but I couldn't really do it that much because there's too much cymbal bleed in the mic. So we're gonna have to live with maybe not having it as sparkly as I would necessarily like for something studio recorded. We'll start there, and then we'll add some compression here and see where we're at.
There'll be 3 more days till June and November. But it's December. It's December again. There'll be 3 more days till June and November. But it's December. It's December again. There'll be 3 more days till June and November. But it's December. It's December again. There'll be 3 more days till June and November. But it's December. It's December again. There'll be 3 more days till June and November. But it's December. It's December again. There'll be 3 more days till June and November. But it's December. It's December again. There'll be 3 more days till June and November.
So you saw me there, like just double checking my EQ, bypassing it, and then listening to with and without just to make sure I'm going in the right direction. It's a little tricky here because there's a lot of bleed, so I can't necessarily hone in as closely on the frequencies I want. But I'm just trying to find like this mid-range boost to the yellow band here is. I'm just trying to find like a good place to boost clarity, where most of her vocal energy is, without sounding too honky. Because if I overboost that like 1 to 2K range, that can be a little bit too like telephone effect sounding. And then just pulling out the right amount of low end where it's not thin, but it's not like getting that ugly like booming sound where you're hearing too much of the microphone. Add a little bit of saturation. This actually helps like so much, because it's giving me those high frequencies I don't get, and it's just giving a little bit more sparkle and clarity. So
There'll be 3 more days till June in November, but it's December again.
like maybe you can, it might be a little bit hard to hear on the recording here, but like it's pretty subtle as I bypass and unbypass it, but it's just adding a little bit more like clarity and presence here. I think what I'm going to do next is I'm going to work on some vocal ambience, because I think for this style of music, it could definitely use some reverb and delays. So let's try that. Just making a delay bus here. This is usually how I set up my reverbs and delays. I rarely will put a reverb on the actual track itself, just because you don't have as much control when you do stuff that way. So I'm making a send. That way I can sculpt that tone separately and also control the mix between the raw and the delay a little bit better.
There'll be 3 more days till June in November, but it's December again. There'll be 3 more days till June in November, but it's December again. There'll be 3 more days till June in November, but it's December again. There'll be 3 more days till June in November, but it's December again. There'll be 3 more days till June in November, but it's December again. There'll be 3 more days till June in November, but it's December again. There'll be 3 more days till June in November, but it's December again. There'll be 3 more days till June in November, but it's December.
All right, this. I'm sure this sounds extremely chaotic. What I'm trying to do right now is I'm trying to find the right delay timing to sync up to the tempo roughly. So I'm looking for about eighth notes. It's going to be really obnoxious while I do that, and then I'm going to dial in the actual delay amount after I find the good time.
There'll be 3 more days till June in November, but it's December again. There'll be 3 more days till June in November, but it's December again. There'll be 3 more days till June in November, but it's December again.
All right, now that I have approximately the right timing, I'm going to separate the link between the left and right. And I like to do this with stereo delays. I'm going to slightly offset the 2 channels. So I'm going to make maybe the left hand 275, and I'll make the right hand, I don't know, like 290. And we'll try that.
There'll be 3 more days till June in November, but it's December again. There'll be 3 more days
Then I'm also going to set the feedback amount to be a little bit different between the two channels. I'll have the left channel is shorter, so I'll have that maybe a little bit more feedback, right? A little bit less feedback. Just to separate those two channels a little bit, so that you get more of the stereo effect.
There'll be 3 more days till June and November, but it's December. It's December again. There'll be 3 more days till June and November, but it's December. It's December again. There'll be 3 more days till June and November, but it's December. It's December again. There'll be 3 more days till June and November, but it's December. It's December again.
Since there's so much bleed, I'm going to have to automate the amount of delay to only hit when the vocals are actually singing as well.
There'll be 3 more days till June and November, but it's December. It's December again. There'll be 3 more days till June and November, but it's December. It's December again. There'll be 3 more days till June and November, but
I'm also going to make a key input. Basically, I'm sending the vocals to a random bus. I'm going to go with bus 5. And then on our delay, I'm going to have that get turned down by a compressor when the clean vocals are singing. So every DAW has a different way to do this, but it should be fairly similar. I'm going to set my key input to bus 5 that I used. And then
there'll be 3 more days till June.
And then if I put this pre-fader for a sec,
But it's December. It's December again. There'll be 3 more days till June and November, but it's December.
so I was just listening to the sidechain there. Put a little bit of a low pass filter as well.
There'll be 3 more.
And now it should decrease the delay when the clean vocal is singing.
There'll be 3 more days till June and November, but it's December. It's December again. There'll be 3 more days till June and November, but it's December. It's December again. There'll be 3 more days till June and November, but it's December. It's December again.
So this will take a little bit of tweaking just to make sure it's hitting the right amount here. I'm going to turn up my feedbacks a little bit.
There'll be 3 more days till June and November, but it's December. It's December again. There'll be 3 more days till June and November, but it's December. It's December again.
So basically what I'm trying to do is have the delay come up specifically like in between lines is kind of the goal I'm going for here. Now that that's like relatively good, I'm going to take my delay level here. And then I'm just going to quickly go in and then have it only trigger when the vocals are singing. Okay, no more singing for the rest of this song. So, hopefully if I did that right, we should have strategic delay that's only happening when there's actually vocals. All right, we're sounding pretty decent so far. Now, the last thing I'm going to do for my basic mix here is I'm going to set reverb levels for all the tracks, and then I'm going to do a little bit of top-down mixing, meaning that I'm going to apply some processing to the overall track as a group. So first with reverb levels, I'm going to kind of go the same order I did before, starting with drums and making my way up my template here. I'm just going to listen to it, and then what I'm listening for is, like, does the instrument sound far back or far forward enough in space? So another thing too is, like, a lot of the instruments that I want to be more upfront, like vocals and guitar, I'm not going to directly put much reverb on the clean vocals. I'm actually going to put more reverb on the delay. So that way there's a little bit of separation where you still have that upfront sound of the clean vocals, but then the ambiance does have that nice sustain that you want. Same thing for a guitar. Like I'm mostly going to put the reverb on the funky modulated delay that we put to the right side here. So yeah, let's try that. First, I'm going to like dial in the sound of the delay. So I'm going to solo drums, but also mute them. So now I'm just hearing like the room reverb track here. In theory. Oh, it's not going to work out solo. I got to do this. Okay. So for my main reverb, I'm going to use a convolution reverb. Those are basically a recording of an actual space, analyzing the reverb of a real space. So those are going to be very realistic. So I'm going to check maybe room reverb, since this is live and outside. I want it to be a little bit, not like a hall that's super big sounding, just like want more of that close-up sound. And then I'll have a second reverb, the plate reverb, that's going to be more lush and more large. Okay, I think I'm liking Small Wooden Room here. Feels very close, so I'm going to use a little bit of that, and then I'm going to use a little bit more of the plate reverb for more of this sense of space for everything. Put a little bit of high pass, low pass, just to make sure it doesn't take up too much space in the mix. And now that I have the actual sound of the reverb dialed in, I'm going to dial in how much I'm using.
It's December again.
I can't actually adjust my reverb level because I automated it. So what I'm going to do for that is if I highlight everything, and then I can just turn it down slightly. Try maybe 2 dB. Just want a little bit less delay.
4 days till June and November, but it's December.
So that sounded a little bit better with the room reverb. If I take that off, you'll maybe hear the difference. It's not much. Like, mainly I hear it on the snare and just getting a little bit more of a realistic sense of space of the instruments. You also notice I did put it on bass, especially for live recording. I want the bass to sound like it's really in the room. That's why also I made sure to do a high pass, because you don't want to be too boomy, but yeah, a little bit of that is okay. So I'm going to do the same thing with the plate reverb. This is going to be more for effects, really. So I'm going to use it mainly on the guitar, ambient send, and then the vocal reverb delay as well. But I'll do the same thing where I'm going to solo the drums, but then also mute them. So I'm getting a pre-fader send, and I'm just hearing the plate reverb, so I can hear the actual tone of that. I really love this plugin, Little Plate, by Soundtoys. A lot of times they give this one away for free. Otherwise, like, honestly, a stock reverb works really well for this. Like, I could even use Pro Tools Deverb or something in this case. But here, I just want it to be pretty long. And I'm going to EQ that as well. Obviously, I'm not going to use it like this on the drums. I'm just kind of using this as an example to get the sound I want. Okay, so I put a really big cut of the around 250 to get rid of any mud, because since it's really long, I don't want it to interfere by adding too many like muddy frequencies. And then also there's I put a high pass on the reverb itself. So now if I put this post fader, I'm probably not going to use much of this on drums, but let's see.
There'll be 3 more days till June and November, but it's December. It's December again.
Oh, I muted my drums. Whoops. It's gonna it can be a problem with live recordings when there's a lot of bleed. I'm like, I'm hearing the drums, but they're not changing. That's because they're muted. Happens to the best of us.
There'll be 3 more days till June and November, but it's December. It's December again.
Okay, so reverb dial in. Now I'm just kind of going back, noticing the overall balance things and tweaking things a little bit. I'm just gonna like do a pass through the song and check that out.
There'll be 3 more days till June and November, but it's December again. Push my face deep beneath this carpet, but there's no carpet. I'm undeserving of this love. There'll be 3 more days.
Notice the snare got a little bit thin after adding the parallel channel. So I just went in and boosted a little bit of that beefy frequencies back up, and then added some saturation to carry those through without having to boost too much.
There'll be 3 more days till June and November, but it's December again. Push my face deep.
Okay, we're sounding pretty good. I might go in later and even out some of these snare drum hits manually. I could just slap more compression on there, but then it's gonna probably lead to the snare being overly compressed. So, like a couple of these hits are just a little bit quieter, where I'm not getting that consistency. So I might go ahead and edit that. Also, in this video, I'm not going to do the background vocals or the fuzz guitar at the end because I got to mix those separately. Those are going to take some extra time. So for now, we're just going to do the meat of the song here. But let's talk about the top-down processing. So what I'm going to do first here is I'm basically going to put a little bit of almost like pre-mastering. I'm going to master this song myself later. But I'm going to put a little bit of glue compression here. And I'm going to use a relatively subtle compressor. There's this, I like this one, Shadow Hills mastering compressor. You want to use something that's like, you can set so that it's not compressing that much, but it does give you some nice vibe and gives you like good tone. So any like compressor that has a little bit of color to it is good for this. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a chunk of this song, loop it here, and then I'm going to mix in like a little bit more compression than I actually want, and then I'm going to use the mix knob here to adjust it. If your compressor doesn't have that, you may have to make a 2-mix bus, so like all of your tracks sending to a bus that then sends to the master channel, and then that way you could have from your 2-mix you could have a send to the compressor, so you can mix like how the percent compressor in parallel if you don't have that on whatever compressor you're using.
There'll be 3 more days till June and November, but it's December again.
right, so that's too much. It is kind of what I'm wanting though, where a little bit of glue everything together, and it's gonna, because I'm compressing the whole mix, it's basically going to turn the reverb down when the instruments are playing louder. So the reverb is going to come up a little bit during the breaks and just give a nice sense of space without being too much. Because I do have quite a lot of reverb in this track, and there's a lot of bleed, which is basically extra reverb. So now I'm going to put the mix down to 0 and then mix this in to taste. Okay, that's pretty good to me. So you saw like gain reduction only about maybe 4 to 6 total, because I'm this compressor has 2 stages, so I'm using 2 separate. Basically, it's 2 compressors. But then I'm only mixing that in like 30%, so I'm getting like 2 dB maximum. So really not a lot of processing on the master channel. You want to be a little bit conservative with that. Next thing I'm going to do, I like to use the iZotope Elements mastering plugin. So this basically just has 3 things. It has a EQ, imager, so you can check like the stereo image, and then a limiter. I'm not really going to use the limiter because I'm going to save that for actual mastering, but I'm going to use the EQ just to kind of visually check that our overall sonic spectrum is doing pretty good. Maybe do some small moves there, and then I might slightly boost the stereo spread of everything just a little bit to give it some nice width. But let's try that. EQ, not that much. When I master the track, I'm gonna have to check the bass frequencies specifically. This is often a problem, especially if you're not mixing in a great room. Right now, I'm actually mixing on headphones, so I will definitely have to check the reference of this mix and against the reference track and adjust like how much bass frequencies are happening. But for the actual mixing stage, I think it sounds fine for now. I just added a little bit of like mid range since I think I cut that a little bit, maybe more than I wanted to from all the tracks. It just needs a little bit more body in like the middle mids, and then a little bit more shimmer on the cymbals with this high end boost, but like barely anything really. And maybe I'll do another touch of this when I go master. And then here I'll maybe just add a little bit of width potentially. So here you want to be really careful adding width because you can easily like completely mess up your mix if you go too far with this. So I just add a tad, and then I'm looking at the vector scope here. You want most of your energy to be between these 45-degree lines. So if you have a lot that's like outside of that, that means that your mix potentially has phase issues that you might have to fix. I think we are sounding pretty good. So I'm going to call it there for my first draft. I'm going to do some extra listening in my car, add in these background vocals and the fuzz guitar tone at the end. But that's pretty much it. So overall process, set your levels, EQ and compress every track. And then other than that, like whatever creative effects you need based on the instrument. We set some reverb levels, and then we did a little bit of top-down compression, a little bit of top-down EQ, just to round out the overall sound of the mix. So I hope that's helpful. I will see you later. Bye.